I don't know how much you had a chance to see or hear from those hearings yesterday, but I was stunned by them.
Yeah, Brian, I didn't get to watch all of it, but I watched quite a bit of it. And the Democrats cannot argue that these following facts have been established. That number one is the Biden cartel received $17 million over several years' time from foreign countries and entities in those countries. Number two is they hid the money. You know, that's what criminals do, is the way that they disperse this money to all this Biden enterprises. They didn't pay their fair share of taxes. That's not being denied. And the punishment for Hunter Biden was not consistent with the crime. I don't think anybody can deny that those are the facts. And what I was really impressed with, though, were the witnesses themselves, that these were credible, honest patriots trying to do their duty, that these are career investigators. And they had no axe to grind that I could tell. There was no, predetermined axe to grind with the Biden family. Even one of them was a Democrat. And they were willing to risk their career and their reputation to come forward. So I salute them for being great patriots.
Yeah, so where does it go from here? What could you guys do on the Senate side? Nothing, because you don't have the majority, right?
Yeah. Elections have consequences. And so often that's unfortunately the answer to the question. As long as Chuck Schumer controls the gavel and the agenda, as long as Bernie Sanders is chairman of the Health Committee or Gary Peters of the HISGAC Committee, that would probably be the appropriate committee, would be the HISGAC Committee. We're doing nothing over here on this.
Yeah, I can imagine. So we'll see if this is ever going to get any traction. Are you surprised that the other networks didn't carry it?
Isn't that amazing? That would be, I think, just of all the explanation points, that would be it, is just this cover-up continues. The cover-up of Joe Biden's mistakes, his ineptness, let alone these potential criminal activities.
Here's what Democrats were saying, cut 17.
We can conclude that this Inspector Clouseau-style quest for something that doesn't exist has turned our committee into a theater of the absurd, an exercise in futility and embarrassment.
Surprised, though, seems to be a new level of hypocrisy here.
We are here today because Donald Trump is exerting an influence campaign.
I know the American people are confused because we're all confused what we're doing here. Nothing this majority has claimed about the president or his family has merit.
Case closed. Nothing has merit.
Right, Brian. It's Donald Trump's fault, right?
Yeah.
It's Donald Trump and Inspector Clouseau. That's whose fault it is. But again, we laid out the facts at the beginning of this interview that they cannot deny that these foreign entities paid the Biden cartel $17 million. They hid the money. They didn't pay their taxes. That's all established. So there is absolutely fire where there's smoke in this case.
So the other thing we're focused on, especially came up in the Twitter files, is some of the squelching of opposing points of view when it came to the virus, the pandemic. And now I find out we're just now going to be cutting off funding to the Wuhan lab. Really? We're just now cutting off funding?
Yeah, Brian, I've been calling for this for over 2 years now, what I knew 2 years ago was a direct trail between Dr. Fauci and the Wuhan Institute of Virology, that a preponderance of evidence suggested that virus was made and leaked from that particular lab. And we've been funding this type of research for 2 decades. That we actually taught Dr. Shi over there, the bat lady, we taught her how to do this protein spikes on the virus. We taught her how to do viral gain of function. We knew the Chinese military was definitely involved, that they were developing bioterrorism weapons, excuse me. And the WIV is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many entities involved in this viral gain of function that we are still funding, specifically EcoHealth. EcoHealth is in the middle. They are part of this gain-of-function mafia that funds viral gain-of-function research. Someday I'd love to come back and talk to you about Trinity Challenge. Trinity Challenge is an organization that's funded by the Chinese Communist Party, by Tencent, by the Gates Foundation, indirectly through EcoHealth as well. Their goal is to collect the DNA of every human, animal, plant, and virus in the world, figure out that genetic sequence, and then, and the good thing, we could do precision medicine, but there are so many bad things they could do with it as well, including develop bioterrorist weapons that could impact, say, the beef industry in Kansas, but they would have a vaccine for their cattle. Turkeys or pigs is probably the more obvious potential victim that they would use bioterrorism weapons against us.
So there is some testimony about how they think it's more of a natural occurrence. Well, through a Freedom of Information Act, Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi were able to get some communication between the CDC and NIH and executives. And it's pretty apparent that there was a strong feeling that this thing did not come from a lab. Listen to Schellenberger.
The messages show they were engaged in politics. They were responding to what they called higher ups, pressure from their bosses, and they were openly working to deceive reporters. Explosive findings that shows that these government-funded scientists waged a disinformation campaign, a propaganda campaign aimed at misleading the American people, and it worked. And then they demanded censorship of people who told the truth.
So they're seeing this real-life communication. Anthony Fauci's right in the middle of it.
Right. And folks should go to my website, marshall.senate.gov. We have a video that we did, I think, 2 years ago on a timeline that spells all this out. Look, from day one, Fauci is involved in the cover-up, that he is orchestrating all the letters to come out in these magazines. And let me just explain why Fauci held such a heavy hand over these folks. He controlled $26 billion a year of funding, but beyond that, he could leverage the Gates Foundation, Clinton Foundation. He could leverage dollars from the DOD, the State Department as well. So he was probably controlling close to $100 billion of grants. And then if you got crossways with Anthony Fauci, he would basically, again, this gain-of-function mafia, he would professionally eliminate you, professionally execute you. He would excommunicate you from the science community. He would make sure that your articles weren't going to be published, that he would shut down your funding as well. So he was intimately involved in this cover-up. Why? Because he did the funding that led to this horrible, horrible pandemic.
Wow. So this is all out there in text messages. And, it would have been totally different if it was Trump's vaccine. Trump came up with the vaccine, Operation Warp Speed. Every Democrat was saying, I don't think I'm going to take it. I think Donald Trump rushed it. All of a sudden, Trump loses the election, and everyone's got to get a shot. The mandate's got to come down. When you analyze all this, do you think that was one of the big mistakes? The mandates?
There's so many mistakes here. Yeah, so many mistakes, Brian. Again, remember that the vaccine was ready to go before the election, but they delayed it. Again, this deep, dark safer delayed it until after the election. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes we could go down here, many, many mistakes. Probably the biggest mistake to me as a physician is that even though I've treated thousands of patients with viruses, pregnant patients with virus, I was not allowed to have a conversation with my OB patient and say, here's the pros and cons, the risk of benefits. My pediatrician wasn't able to talk to my daughter about my grandkids and say, here's the pros and cons. If any physician deviated from the Fauci mantra, you were excommunicated, you were shamed, your license was even threatened to be taken away if you veered at all from Anthony Fauci's dictums. So that was probably the biggest mistake because, again, the advice I gave my parents in their 80s is way different than the advice I gave my grandchildren. My grandchildren did not take the vaccine. I did not think the benefits outweighed the risk. But my parents, I was having them stand in line to make sure they were the first ones to get the vaccine. I think those were the right decisions then, and I think it was the right decision now.
Very interesting. Lastly, the Senate, you guys desperately want it back. There's rumors that Senator Murkowski's going to flip parties. Have you heard that?
Oh, my gosh. No, Brian, I'm not. That's the scariest thing I've heard today. She and I are working on several critical issues. Let's hope and pray that's not true. I think there's just a greatest chance, though, that, maybe Senator or Manchin would come our way. So we'll see.
All right. So on the Senate side, Donald Trump has indicated when it comes to Montana, indicated to Congressman Matt Rosendale and Alex Mooney in West Virginia that he's unlikely to endorse either man in their Senate bid, which would clear the way for Jim Justice and Tim Sheehy. They might have won anyway, but Trump's saying, I'm not going to go with you guys. So he's trying to streamline the process. Those are two key seats you have to win if you want to get the majority.
Absolutely. And President Trump's going to do what President Trump's going to do. I do think that the people from Montana, the Republicans from Montana, should pick their candidate. I think the people from West Virginia, the good people of West Virginia, should pick their Republican candidate. Look, we're going to win West Virginia. We are going to absolutely West Virginia. It's going to be a skunking over there. I think Montana is wide open. It's 50-50. We need a good, strong candidate. That's what the process is for. And I'm going to respect the process, and personally, I'd like to see people in Washington D.C. have less of a play in those primaries, and then come in hard, whoever the candidate is, who the Republican candidate is, then let's unite and come in strong.
So our energy czar, or our clean energy czar, John Kerry went over to China, came back empty-handed when it came to trying to convince them to stop doing a coal plant a day and lessen their emissions. Are you surprised?
No, not at all. Until we stand up to China, they're going to keep doing whatever they want to do. Right now they know that they are the biggest bully in the room, that Joe Biden is running from them with his tail between his legs, that he's completely reactive. So Joe Biden has lost his reputation on the national stage. And again, this is part of President Xi's grand plan over the next 200 years for China to be the world power. Again, folks in America need to realize that America is a baby. And China looks at these last 70 years of American dominance as an aberrance to world history, that China is the rightful owner of the crown. So there's no respect from Xi to our leader. That's why it's so important. Again, elections have consequences. We need someone who's going to have the fortitude to stand up to Wall Street and President Xi, because let's face it, there are so many of us that benefit from doing business with China. It's easier said than done, but we need someone who's tough on China.
All right.